Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, former Chicago Tribune columnist John Cass. Now you get his writings at johncassnews.com, and you get his Chicago Way podcast there as well. How about this pronouncement from Team Biden on the electric vehicle gambit? It's a nice twofer. You get the Green New Deal 1.0 with the so-called infrastructure legislation, and then you followed it up with this collaboration with the big automakers to jump electric vehicle sales from 3% today to 50% in 9 years.
And who pays for that subsidy? Because I like a V8. I like a Camaro with a combustion engine.
Yeah.
But I saw a Camaro being sold, an electric Camaro.
Yeah. Okay. Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Wall Street
You
Journal.
got to be a man to drive a Camaro.
Yeah, sure. Muscle cars for John Cass only. I understand.
Love it.
Wall Street Journal opining automakers don't want to drive the electric highway alone because then they could lose money while others churn out profits. The solution? Collusion with the Biden administration to regulate competition across the industry and raise prices for consumers. Automakers have been touting their increasing EV sales and claim electric cars are the future. Great. Then government doesn't need to subsidize them. Steve Jobs never asked the government to pay people to buy iPhones or to finance their production. And CEOs wonder why Americans have soured on big business. For more on this, we're pleased to, and a couple of other topics, we're pleased to be joined by Brad Polumbo, who's a libertarian conservative journalist and Washington Examiner contributor, as well as policy correspondent for FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. Brad, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
There's still debate going on within GOP ranks with those please clap Republicans who negotiated that $1 trillion Green New Deal deal with the Biden administration. And now you have sort of the next iteration of the agenda, which is we're not just here to subsidize Teslas. We're here to subsidize the entire industry.
Yeah, and it's a big swamp alert for me. Anytime that I see subsidies for some business special interest, I want to know who the politicians are and who the lobbyists are that are in their ear to get that, because those kinds of things don't come in the actual interests of typical Americans. In fact, electric vehicle subsidies, time and time again, benefit upper middle class, mostly white liberals, because that is the demographic of who drives. I mean, have you ever seen a poor person driving an electric vehicle or a hybrid? I have not. Right? It's not helping the little guy. It's basically a way of shoveling money to their own constituency, and that's why it's so popular with Democrats.
Chardonnay Antifa drive them.
Maybe the Antifa folks drive it.
Chardonnay.
This number just out, economy was, this is why you wait for the actual number from the Labor Department as opposed to the ADP number. ADP had it at 300,000 new jobs, rough round numbers, in July. The report is employers added 943,000 jobs, jobless rate falling to 5.4%, but it's still about 40% higher than that in Illinois, for example. And other blue states. 943,000 jobs, that beat the street estimates. It's good news. You know what the response should be? Maybe we start locking things down again. I don't want this thing to overheat, Brad.
Well, right. So maybe what we need to do is shut down the economy. But it's interesting, right, that the ADP numbers were lower because, the ADP only counts private sector, whereas the other one counts all the government jobs, too. So I think that tells you something right there. The Labor Department one counts growth of government and new public sector jobs. But I will say this, I'm glad to see the unemployment rate going down, the numbers getting better, of course. That's what we want to see. But you have to look a little deeper. And in many red states across the country right now, you have unemployment rates that are lower than they were before the pandemic, right? Because they've completely opened up long before the blue states. And more importantly, even, they got rid of that insane welfare that paid more than work. But lots of blue states, I believe Illinois, though I'm not sure,
yes,
put that in place.
Yes.
And as long as that's the case, the state level breakout will have higher unemployment in those states, guaranteed.
What are the businesses that are thriving because of that policy you're talking about?
Well,
the get back to work policy.
the ones that are struggling under it in the states that have kept the welfare in place are basically anywhere that employs minimum wage labor, but even hourly labor at a $15. In many states, actually, in dozens of blue states, you can earn the equivalent of $25 an hour on these benefits. So if you're a small business or a restaurant, even if you pay your employees $18 an hour or something, it's a pretty good hourly rate, you are out of luck. You have to compete with the government to get people off the couch. And the inverse of that is that the businesses that are benefiting in these red states are disproportionately small businesses. You know, Target and Amazon don't have to worry too much about their labor budget, right, if it goes up 20%. They're not bankrupted by that, but the mom and pops are, and that's who's benefiting.
Well, right, and to your point, the NFIB's chief economist William Dunkelberg, National Federation of Independent Business chief economist William Dunkelberg, small businesses continue to struggle to find workers to fill open positions. 49% of all owners reported job openings they could not fill in the current period, which was up 3 points from June. And again, another record high reading, people that have jobs to fill and they cannot fill them. And I hear this anecdotally from friends across industries, corporate cleaning businesses to obviously the restaurant business. That's probably number one on the hit list, and the hospitality industry more generally.
They're killing the Greeks, Dan.
Manufacturing too, the small to mid-sized manufacturer. You hear this across sector.
Yeah, you do. And I do find it interesting that it's not just anecdotally, though. The anecdotes are everywhere. According to the Chamber of Commerce, there's 1.2 open, unfilled job openings for every unemployed person in this country. And in fact, this really was interesting to me. They did a poll where they asked people, just why aren't you going back to work? And 1.8 million people openly said, yeah, it's because the benefits pay so good. Now, I would bet you it's even much more than that, because in polling, people often don't like to admit things that are socially undesirable, so they underreport that. But just minimum, as a floor, you have 1.8 million people out there currently not working because the government has made it pay better or the same for them to just stay at home and do nothing. And so I guess can you even be that critical of them? I guess they are being lazy, right? But they're just responding to the broken, idiotic incentives the government created.
You write recently that the CDC just proved Milton Friedman right. How so?
Well, Milton Friedman, one of my favorite things that he ever said, the Nobel Prize-winning free-market economist, is that nothing is so permanent as a temporary government program. And I think no quote has aged better or proven more prescient during the pandemic to date than that quote. In particular, I mean, this is for everything, right? Mask mandates are coming back. All these things that were supposed to be temporary and short-term and emergency measures are becoming a part of our way of life. But the biggest one that prompted me to say that is that the CDC just reinstituted this insane eviction moratorium. And that was supposed to be temporary. Now it's on its fourth iteration a year later. And they are basically commandeering the entire national rental market by unelected bureaucrats and seizing people's property without compensation. It's unconstitutional, it's unlawful, and it's illogical as a policy. I mean, just imagine if you told grocery stores they had to let anyone come in, take food, and leave without paying, right?
We do that in Chicago.
Never made any sense.
You can steal up to $1,000 a day in Chicago. No one bothers you.
Well, a lot of big cities as well, with non-prosecution prosecutors. But with respect to Friedman, it's interesting to apply that observation, because the point he's making underlying that pithy witticism, for which Uncle Milty was known, is that you start paying people, start giving people a benefit, you create a constituency around that benefit, and you serve that constituency, so that constituency serves you. It's pretty straightforward, fairly linear. But here, what is the benefit? What's the benefit? Who is benefiting from lockdowns and mask mandates and vaccine mandates and so forth?
Class.
So forth. But I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself. What it's permanent, because why? Because some people are benefiting people look at this and they try and apply this or examine this through some sort of common sense lens of what makes sense. Forget what makes sense. Figure out who's benefiting, the constituency that's being served, and who they serve, and then you'll probably get to why things are the way they are.
Well, there's many constituencies are benefiting. For example, with the moratorium, you've got renters and a bunch of other people who don't have to pay their bills. With the unemployment, you've got cash flush voters who don't have to work. But even more than that, the media, the mainstream media, COVID is the best thing that ever happened to their bottom line. And so they never want to give it up, right? Every new variant or alarmism they could possibly get worked up over, the only thing better for their bottom line in terms of their traffic and their viewers was Trump, and he's out of office now. So
right. If we can't have Trump, we have got to hold on to COVID so that we can protect our phony, baloney jobs. Right.
What they have to do is they have a strong incentive to perpetuate this, and that's true with all of these policies. Even with the lockdowns, it's not the case that lockdowns hurt everyone. They hurt lots of people terribly, but guess who thrived with every store in town closed? Amazon. Right. Walmart never closed. Walmart stores never closed. Target never closed. It was your smaller stores that did. So for every big government intervention like this, there are winners and there are losers, and those winners aggressively lobby to keep them in place. And unfortunately, when something's sold as temporary, we're a lot more willing to accept it when we shouldn't be, because we should know that, like Friedman said, there's no such thing as temporary when it comes to government.
So who's taking advantage of this as the government basically confiscates private property by not allowing renters to toss people who aren't paying the rent? What happens to the property? What happens to the tax revenue that these landlords, and not all of them are gigantic corporations, but they're like moms and dads who have maybe buy a two flat.
Yeah.
What happens to them? And where's the discussion on the tax revenue and the tax side?
Well, exactly. There was a moratorium on having to pay the rent, but there was no moratorium on their mortgages or their tax bills or their utilities. So what's happening, I've interviewed a bunch of landlords and also received a lot of mail from them since I've been writing about and covering this issue. They are not. Most of them are, middle or working class people.
Right. A
lot of them are older folks who have one property, and that's their retirement even. What's happening is that a lot of them are leaving. I spoke to one woman, for example, who owns 3 rental properties. 2 of them have finally become vacant, and they had non-paying occupants. She's not renting them out again. She's just letting them sit empty, because as long as the moratorium's in place, she has no way to actually get paid, so she'll just not even put them on the market. She would lose money by renting them out. So you are seeing, and you will see a serious drop in supply because of this, and that's exactly what you could have predicted from the beginning.
He is Brad Polumbo. He is a contributor to the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com, as well as a policy correspondent for FEE, Foundation for Economic Education. That's fee.org. Brad Polumbo, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
When you're doing home improvement, it's all about who you can trust. Amy Jacobson here, and I have a great recommendation. You can trust these guys.
Call Crumweedy.
Oh, yeah, Crumweedy Home Pros. They do great work. Is your home needy?
Call Crumweedy.
Roofing, siding, windows, even kitchen cabinet restyling. It's a great time to get it done, folks, with Crumweedy. Get 50% off installation on windows, siding, roofing, and kitchen cabinet restyling. Plus, no money down, no payments, and no interest for 18 months. This is a great deal. And the best reasons to do business with Crumweedy? Trust. They only do things the right way, and they have the best warranties in the business. It's a multi-generational family business that shares your values. Roofing, siding, windows, even kitchen cabinet restyling. What do you do?
Call Crumweedy.
630-595-8020.